Welcome, fellow travelers. It's Nikki Gold. Today, I wanted to talk about a few concepts. One is judgment versus discernment. Discernment is how I define discernment, and not that I'm Webster's or anything like that. How I define discernment is it's not okay for me, but you go ahead. So it doesn't feel right. So, when you're trying to figure out what you should do, what you shouldn't do, and should is not a really great word, but like for instance, if you're trying to think of should I join this movement? Should I join, should I take these classes? Should I read this book? Discernment would be, does it feel right for me? If it does feel right for me, great, move forward. If it doesn't feel right for me, let it go and bless the people it does feel right for. Now, judgment, on the other hand, there's a couple of ways judgment is going to be used. Judgment can be something is like, that's wrong. My moral compass says you are wrong. Judgment. The other way judgment can be used is, I'm better than this person because this person, I'm judging you to be less than me. And I get to build up my ego because I'm pointing out your faults and judging you and saying you're wrong, and that makes me right. That makes me bigger. That accomplishes nothing. So, and a lot of people get those confused. It's okay to say, no, that's all right. It just doesn't feel right for me. I pass, but thank you. That would be discernment. You know what you're doing? Oh my God, that's awful. You know how scary that is? Oh my gosh, you're gonna get hurt, blah, blah, blah. That's judgment. Or, I'm not like those people. That's judgment. So we want to stay out of that lane if we can. We want to go from, this is right for me, this is not right for me. And the reason we need to be solid on these two concepts is when we're wading through stuff on, for instance, YouTube or Facebook or any other social media platform, is we need to be able to say, you know what, this isn't right for me. But for instance, if you're on Facebook, I don't need to go drop a comment and they're going, well, that's not how it, because who wants that? Like, stay in your lane. If you don't like this, hide it, because that's what I do. I don't try to get engaged in fights. I hide stuff. If people put up stuff that's like, that's offensive, either I hide it, or if I'm in a group with them, I report it. And sometimes if I'm in a private group, then there might be a discussion. But if it's just generally on my page and it's a friend or whatever, hide that. No need to comment, because I see all the time, like I'll be on some thing that I really am enjoying and some person, and it's like, why did you just come here just to negative all over everybody? There is no point in that. That's that's judgment there. That's like, I am better than you and you're wrong. Now, discernment is hiding or even reporting if it's something that's really not okay, and just scrolling on. That would be discernment. This isn't okay for me. I don't feel it, but I don't look at you funny or anything like that. That would be discernment. And of course there are exceptions, because I know, this is, again, the mentality that we live in. I have to still say this just in case someone's watching that's not a normal, or not a normal, but isn't a subscriber, and they're watching this and go, yeah, but what about blah, 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 blah. There's always a yeah, but what about? Again, I know they say use your best judgment, but use your discernment. Because again, judgment does bring up these things like court, the judgment against this person. That's not a great thing. We don't want to walk up, we don't want to add extra negative. We want to, for instance, when you study Kung Fu, the main thing about Kung Fu is you let your opponent, not your enemy, we don't refer to people as, someone's your opponent, somebody is a challenger, somebody is this and that, not your enemy. You let your opponent waste their energy. So for instance, one of the first things you learn when you learn Kung Fu is you learn to slide and open. So if I were standing and someone were going to telegraph a kick or a punch, I would just slide open and move out of the way and let them expend that energy. And then I might reach around, grab, or go with an elbow, whatever the case may be. But you let the other person expend the energy and you don't let it come into you. Because here's the thing is, once you go jump on that site, or once you go jump on this thing and you start, you have just sucked their energy in. We have to learn to be able to go, not for me, and move out of the way. And not in an unkind way. We aren't going to elbow them, because we're not, we're not doing kung fu here, but spiritual kung fu, I guess. But really just moving out of the way, just letting it pass you, not letting it hit you, not letting it slam you straight into the chest and be inside of you. Because then as you're healing, when we don't even have to have physical wounds, we can have psychic wounds. And I don't mean psychic like, but psychic wounds, psyche. When we have that, when it's inside of us, like physical wounds are sometimes easier to deal with, because it's like, I can see it's healing, I can see what's going on. Psychic wounds, those wounds inside of us, those are much harder to deal with and tend to. So if we can just stop adding to them, if we can stop making things harder on ourselves. And let me tell you, some of this stuff that I say sometimes on here is for me too. A lot of times I wouldn't say it if I was not guilty from time to time. And this is why I share, because I'm sharing my journey with you, as I hope you'll share your journey with me. So there's a lot to discern lately. There are quite a few new age, spiritual, whatever you want to call it. I don't prefer any of these names. I think they all sound a little strange. And I don't like woo-woo either, but I don't know how else to put it, because eventually everything becomes less woo-woo. I remember when being a yoga instructor was very woo-woo for some people in my life. And I remember meditation was very woo-woo. And now, like, you have doctors both suggesting to people that they take a yoga class and that maybe they meditate. And it's now moved into mindfulness and all this and that, a softer label that people aren't going, the church or anybody else isn't going, type of thing. So, because we have to look at too, when we do get judgmental, we have to stop and go, what was that about? What's going on there? Because it doesn't just happen for no reason. And it may not be you specifically. It could be, like I said, something that you learned in church when you're little, or something that your parents taught you, and that isn't ours, and it doesn't feel good, but we still have it there, and it pops this little head up when all of a sudden it's poked, So there are a lot of things going on. And if you watch YouTube as much as I do, and I do it a lot less now, because I'm kind of a little busier, but when you watch YouTube a lot, you'll have people say stuff like, I'm enlightened, or I'm 5D, which is 5-dimensional, and currently on this planet where we are, we're 3D, so these people have raised to the new. But here's the deal, not being judgmental, being discerning, just to help other people, because there's certain times where we don't let people fall into a trap. You can believe all this stuff. However, in my personal experience, and I've dealt with gurus, I've dealt with all sorts of things in my search and my journey, and the people who will come out and say to you, I'm enlightened, I have found in my experience that generally they aren't. Because here's the deal, enlightenment is not static. And that's the very first thing you learn on your journey to enlightenment or evolution, whatever you'd like to call it, is that it's not static. So for instance, you might have had, like we've talked about this before, you might have had a great meditation yesterday and you felt like you're this happy, just way happier than usual, because normally your baseline's like here. So you feel way up here. So when you drop down to about here, that's not going to feel good, because now you're kind of getting used to this vibe, and this vibe's just really horribly painful, but even dropping down just a little could feel really not great. So what the problem is people who say, I'm enlightened, or I'm in 5D, I'm above all this stuff. the problem comes is my other experience is that these people talking about I'm enlightened, I'm 5D, and that sort of thing. And 5D, let me give you a really short rundown. So there's this whole scenario, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I've noticed conspiracy theorists pulling onto this and hooking it into political and all, into the Q theory and all these different things. And if you're for that, God bless you, there's a better page for you, or there's a better channel for you. This is definitely not a channel if you're really into that. I'm not judging it. It's just not where we are. This is not conspiracy theory. I'm not talking politics. Anyways, so the theory, and this was long before Q and all these other things, the theory about 3D, 5D. So according to certain people, that the Earth we're on right now is 3D, three-dimensional. Now, according to them, there's supposed to be a shift, and this has been going on for quite some time. This is kind of like when people say, revelation about revelations and about, the end of times, end of days, those sort of things, same deal. A little kinder, but some ways not. So 3D is where we are spinning currently. Now, what happens is there are a bunch of people who are 5D that are way above the 3D people. And this is the judgment already. So you can tell this is not the best way to go if there's judging. So the 5D is this energy. We're more evolved. We are more advanced than you 3D peons, if the term might be fitting here. And so that 5D is going to be that the planet Earth itself, Gaia, is going to evolve and split off from 3D to 5D. So all you unfortunate people who haven't evolved to this 5D are going to be stuck here on this like hellscape dome. And the rest of them are going to be like, yeah. So the problem, like I said, is there's judgment in that. So to me, that does not seem, my discernment says that doesn't feel right to me. Because if I wanted that judgment, I would stay with Christianity. Keeps me out of trouble a lot more. I would stay with that. Now, the problem, it'd be no problem if people talked about it in a certain way. But the thing is, raising, advancing. But the thing is, some of these people are representing, I'm better than you. And like I said, that's judging. And so now what they're doing is they're creating, just like we have in the real world, we got right against left, red against blue, this against this, blah, 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 against blah, 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 blah. Fill in the blanks, whatever it is. Now, instead of creating harmony, understanding, inside spiritual growth, developing and actually evolving, actually working towards enlightenment, they're now putting this judgment on people. And now, originally it started out with this whole 3D, 5D, with this galactics, so these different races from different star, like Sirius and Pleiades star systems. So they're supposedly looking down on us and helping us. And there's the reptilians and the grays, which are supposed to be the bad guys in this whole plot, the 3D, 5D plot. And originally, when I first started hearing the whispers of this, they were talking about Rothschild and that 1% line, and even throwing in, for instance, Queen Elizabeth's family line, and these different bloodlines. And so of course the monarchies, of course, are reptilians, and of course they've made the reptilians irredeemable sinners that can never, and the cabal and evil. And so now they've just changed the names, and now it's certain people. And one of the people happens to be, when you hear a certain name mentioned, the person who's saying this. Unfortunately, this is line between discernment and judgment, but when there's a certain name that's mentioned, that people mention in this thing, that if they say this is actually very anti-Semitic. So I'm not even going to bring it up. So, so there's hate going into this whole thing. There is this, they're the bad guys, we're the good guys. That's not how this is supposed to go. This is when people say, you'll hear people say, I'm religious, I'm spiritual, not religious, because the thing is, I think that drives most people away from religion is that judgment. The whole thing, and if people would listen to the teacher or the master, Jesus, and again, you can think of him as master, you can think of him as teacher. If you want to think of him as savior, go ahead, whatever works for you. What Jesus said is the kingdom of heaven's within you. What that means to me is that when I go outside and I start creating drama, right, left, fifth, third, all these things, that I've lost my peace, my heaven. The only place we can find heaven is right here. Because if you don't have peace in here and here, you're not going to find it out here. It's going to be a mirror of what you are in here. So the only way to find what we want, the only way to do what we need is to stay inside of us and not be caught up in, are you 3D or 5D? And that sort of thing. And use our discernment, not our judgment. We don't want to make anyone wrong because we don't want to create negativity. We don't want to create drama. The most helpful, loving thing we can do is step out of the way, let them expend their energy. They'll get it. All right, fellow travelers, thank you so much for joining me today. Peace, love, namaste.